Now I'm going to transition into our next session for this morning. Before I do that, I'd like to recognize the sponsor of this session. Target is our bronze sponsor of our executive programs and this session sponsor for our strategic board service session. Thank you, Target. Do we have a video? No video. No? No. Okay. Our speaker for the next session is our very own Sid Wilson, President and CEO of the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility. Sid? Oh, there you are.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Wrong side.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll give her a hug.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, thank you. Well, buenos días. Buenos días, mi gente. All right, I know, we gotta get some energy going. All right, so this session that I want to talk about is something that I've been doing for, the last, 3 to 4 years, because one of the things that always comes up, we always hear about how to build your network, how getting on boards is about your network and sponsors and others that can help influence this. But what we often don't hear is how can we be strategic about our board service? And to give a little background from my end is that I've served on many boards, large nonprofit boards. Actually, Ricardo Sansandua, in full disclosure, I met him when I got on the board of directors of Latino Justice, PearlDeath, one of the 2 major Latino legal defense funds in the whole country, and I serve on some, boards that you're all very familiar with. I serve on the board of directors of Junior Achievement USA. If anyone has ever been involved with Junior Achievement, you have Junior Achievement in the chapters in the different cities. There's one national board, and I'm on that board. After we're done here at HACR, I'm off to Paris on Friday because I was named to the board of directors of the USA Expo 2027 board of directors that is going to go to Paris this weekend to make the case to bring the 2027 World Expo, even though it's a World's Fair, to the US in 2027. And I do serve on a medium-sized private corporate board with a lot of the things that you heard Ricardo and many others talk about, and you'll be hearing more of this. But the question is we always hear like, this is what we should be doing, but then the question is, how do we think about this? And so I wanted to share with you what I consider to be strategic board service. Let me just say that this is not about how a nonprofit works, how all this stuff. You're all too senior for that. Everybody here serves on nonprofit boards. What this is how you think about your board service and how to think strategically if your goal, and this is key, if your goal is to strengthen your network so that one day you can get noticed for either larger nonprofit boards or even a corporate board. Every single board that I've ever served on, I got there because somebody sponsored me. Somebody who knew me from something else said, you were serving here, and I think you're good here. I'm now on here. I'm stepping off this board. I want you to be in there. And so this is all part of what we'll be talking about. So let me just say, start with this, is qualifications versus connections. And you've heard a lot of this stuff. It's that, it's your qualifications that get you a job or a promotion. But it's your connections and your credibility that get you a prominent board seat, regardless of whether it's a corporate board or a prominent nonprofit board. A lot of these things that we've been talking about, and you heard Ricardo, who I love the fireside chat with Ricardo Sandua and Silvia Perez Cash, because it was just so genuine and so true. And nonprofit service, when planned strategically, can actually enhance your professional credibility. And so we'll be talking more about this, but I want to make sure I kind of lay that foundation. And this is what this session, I'll say, talking strategically about nonprofit and how this can also support your overall professional development. Because before I became the CEO of HACR, I was on Wall Street for 21 years and served on just some very high-level boards. But, and I'll go through this one pretty quickly because, again, you all will be familiar with this. But the benefits of this, I mean, it magnifies your professional development with the possibility of your employer sponsoring you. This happens a lot. Many of you get on a board either because the company asked you to serve on the board, or you got on the board and you asked the company to say, can you sponsor me to serve on this board? Because you'll see, we all have had these experiences of joining a board. You find out that there's a lot of support that's required, and sometimes they're asking you to serve on the board because of where you work. And so those things are very important as well. It expands and increases your external and internal networks, especially with higher ranking leaders at your company. I talk about this all the time that when you're serving on a board, especially if it's a board like in my case, I'm with Junior Achievement, and I hear all these companies that are involved with Junior Achievement. I'm like, hey, CEO, I see you're involved with Junior Achievement New York. Hey, let me know when you're going to be there again. Let's talk. And then wham, I just made a connection with the CEO, and so it really expands that. And then it exposes you to other nonprofit board directors, and this is the key, who also serve on boards of other prominent, whether it's corporate or other nonprofits. And so it could lead to recommendations for future higher profile nonprofit appointments, civic appointments, even promotions within your company as you become more ambassadorial as a board director. And so how strategic nonprofit board service can support your career. One is, again, the obvious one. Your employer may sponsor you to serve on a nonprofit board where the company has an existing relationship. I know I get this all the time where they're saying, hey, I have a senior executive vice president. We want to get them involved in some of these various boards. Which ones do you think would be a good person for our chief marketing officer, chief operating officer, et cetera? And so we'll work with companies to help them but they're looking for that. It promotes you as an ambassador of your company, of that nonprofit board, and increases your network credibility internally within the company and beyond your direct reports and leaders, because we all sometimes hear the challenge of like, I can't get beyond my direct report. And the culture of my company is this. One of the ways to work around that is board service, because that is one of the ways that it can help you to get more noticed, within the highest levels within your company. And as you move up the corporate ladder, the company may also move you up a parallel ladder when it comes to your board service sponsorship, thus allowing you to serve on boards with higher financial give-gets. And I want to get into give-gets because this is going to be a key area. And then companies recognize that the employees' ambassadorship on nonprofit boards strengthen retention and longevity of the companies, thus greater possibilities for career promotions because of how you're moving up parallel with your board service. So in other words, you may have been a mid-level manager, for example, and then maybe you were on, let's say, I'll choose a nonprofit, United Way of the greater USA city, USA, whatever that is. And then eventually as you're rising up, you're moving up into these higher areas, into these boards, whether it's and in fact, in my case, I got involved with Junior Achievement of New York many years ago. And, and as I was moving up, so was my board service, and now I'm on the national board. And so, so those things will be important. But here's one that I think is really important when any of you thinking about your next board, your board service, and that is, and I do this every time meticulously. I never ever join a board without this. Who else is on that board? Who else is on the board? What are their bios? Do they serve on other non-prominent boards? Every single time I go, and nowadays it's very easy because most cases it's on the website, is look at the board directors and what's their background, because remember, this is about strategic board service. Whether this is about your passion for the nonprofit or whatever it is, but if you're thinking strategically, you've got to know who else is on that board. And is there a history, and this is another one that's important, is there a history of that nonprofit attracting highly credible board directors? Are there any connections between you and any other board members or any board members that, any of the board members' employers that's there? Is there a history? Because we all know that when you look at some boards that just historically just attract some really incredibly high-level leaders, that's the big difference between that one and another board where you're looking at the board and saying, well, I don't know who they are, I don't know what their background is, I don't know their professional caliber. And so that may play a role in your decision of saying, is this the board that I want to serve on? And is there a vetting process, which should be obvious, but you'd be surprised it doesn't always happen that way. And if you are serving or planning on serving on multiple boards, are the missions diverse from each other? I met someone, about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, who told me, he says, I'm on like 9 Latino nonprofit boards. And I was like, oh my God, you're on 9. I get it. You love Latinos like I love Latinos. I know you love Latinos, but do you have to show it through 9 Latino boards? And I shared with her, I says, how much time are you spending on these boards? But then here was the kicker, which I'll be talking about as well. I says, have you met all, if you take the average board that's about 17, maybe 15 or 17 board directors, that times 9. How many of them, I said, do you know them all? And then I asked her, I says, how many of them serve on other prominent nonprofit boards, or even how many serve on corporate boards? Would you believe the answer was 0? And I told this person, I said, I got news for you. You could be on 19 of those exact same boards, but it is not going to help you because you didn't think strategically about the board service that you're there. I said, write a check, support them, do what you can, but drop like 6 of them, maybe 7 of them, and just be supportive of them and make sure that you're thinking about more boards that increase your circles. And so everything from, are the missions diverse from each other? Are the demographics diverse? Are your board committee assignments different? Finance committee, nominations committee, program committees, et cetera. And so now here's one thing that I love. This is a slide that I love to talk about, because then it says, well, what kind of boards are these? Well, this is nonprofits that have a history, overall history, of producing future corporate board directors. And at the very, very top of that list, there are museum boards. Museum boards, I without even looking at, I don't know, who's here from LA? All right. What's the prominent museum in LA? Is it the LA Museum of Art, LA Museum of Science? I don't know the names of this, but I don't even have to. I can bet my mortgage that if you went to that board list, at least 10%, but as many as probably a quarter of them, either serve on another prominent nonprofit or they serve on corporate boards. And so museum boards are just well known. I'm sure in Chicago and many others, it's just well known that museum boards, foundation boards, very popular with producing either attracting those who serve on corporate boards or will produce someone that will eventually get onto a corporate board. And in fact, the corporate board that I serve on, I met the CEO at it was actually a museum event, and we met and we talked, and he's like, hey, what about you for my board? And that's how it happened. Museums, foundations, prominent health-related boards, major hospitals. Again, every hospital, I don't know, if I take a hospital in, let's say, Memphis, Tennessee, you could take the Memphis, Tennessee General Hospital, if there is such a name. But if you go to that board, I can almost bet my mortgage that same thing. You're going to look at that board, and you're going to see some prominent leaders that serve on those nonprofits, that are serving a corporate board. So American Heart Association, American Cancer Society, all these organizations that you're well aware of. But here's one that's interesting. College boards, but I put especially private college boards. Now, public college boards are great. but because of the governance structure of how they get appointed, it's a different process for a private college board. A private college board works like a prominent nonprofit board. They choose you to serve on that board of trustees, and then there's a nominations committee, and then you're in there. And you'll be amazed when you look at many of these private college boards who serves on there. And so it's really prominent. Human service organizations, again, companies that you're well aware of, United Way, Boys and Girls Club, Habitat for Humanity, all these ones that you're all well familiar with. And the other one here is well-funded national nonprofits that promote a widely accepted cause. Nature Conservancy, education, social reform, humanitarian, religious-based charities, diversity and inclusion. I should throw chambers in there as well, since as we had two prominent Latinos that lead their citywide chambers. And so understanding the give-get. Here's where everyone gets all caught up. As you're looking at these boards, yes, most of these major prominent nonprofits often have give-gets. And according to Board Assist, the average give-get is about $5,000. And that's just the average. But we know that the give-get for many of these museum, hospital, high profile nonprofits, it can start as high as $25,000 annually, and there are some that it's $100,000 annually. And so you're looking at this saying, oh my goodness, this is out of my area, but let's see how this works, because you may be able to leverage your employer to have in-kind donations count towards your give-get goals if the nonprofit counts that. And know your give-get potential and make it to match it with the possibility of serving on that nonprofit. In other words, you may be able to make that goal simply by talking to your company about saying, hey, can I talk to the foundation? Everybody that's here in this room, your companies all have very prominent corporate foundations. And we know that the foundations work in many ways to support a particular cause. And if you're aligning what you're doing towards that cause, it's going to be very helpful and supportive that you're going to get that support, and especially as you're rising up, where if you become like a senior vice president or an executive vice president or others like this, it's going to make a difference in allowing you to be able to serve and meet these give-gets. And so, what should you do before you get on your nonprofit? One, know the process of getting nominated. That's the obvious, as everyone here knows, and make your interests known. I said, hey, I would love to serve on one of these major, more of these nonprofits that serve a particularly large cause. If you have no connections with anyone on that board, find a mutual connection who can help you introduce you to that board. And it's almost a basis of asking for a sponsorship and just being overt and saying, hey, can you help me get on this particular board? Have your give-get strategy in place before you join the board. Don't join the board and get sticker shock. Okay, congratulations, this is one of the board. Here's your annual give-get form that you have to fill out. It's $25,000 and payable before the fiscal year closes. And you're like, oh, I didn't know that. And so know that before you join. And if the nonprofit has an existing relationship with your company, check to see if your company is willing to recommend you for the board. In other words, you may be able to get on this board through your company because there's already an existing relationship, there's already existing sponsorship, and they may say, hey, I want you to serve on the United Way of New York City or Greater Los Angeles or the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Dallas or the American Heart Association of Wisconsin, and we want you to serve on that board. And if your company foundation has a matching gift program, use it to magnify the financial give-get, because sometimes boards will require you to give a certain amount. But if you do that, ask your foundation, hey, will you match me? I found that most companies actually will match you. And so those are the opportunities. In fact, I'm aware there's even a few that if you show that you donated and you volunteer, you may get even a double match. And so those are some opportunities that take place at some foundations, at some corporate foundations. And then what do you do after is know your board outcome. Know what it takes to increase, to succeed as a board director, and how to get noticed by your fellow board directors. In other words, get to know your fellow board directors. I mean, if you're on the board and you don't know your fellow board directors, they're not going to know you. Because I love what Ann mentioned is that it's not just who you know, but it's who knows you. And so you have to get noticed by your fellow directors. And then get to know your fellow board members personally, especially those that serve on corporate boards. I'll tell you a funny story that, there was years ago before I joined HACR, I was on another very prominent board, and I looked around, I was like, oh my God, this person is like on this board or this one, and in a way that's just super intentional, I was like, I want to sit next to her. And it says, I want to sit next to you at every board meeting because we're going to get to know each other throughout these board meetings. Because why? Because I want to get noticed by these individuals who could be able to recommend and nominate you for other nonprofits. And so absolutely, find a way to sit next to the person. Sometimes it happens by accident. Like I shared yesterday during luncheon, I met Aunt Chow by accident. I sat next to her. But look what it did. 3 or 4 years later, it turned into a wonderful relationship, and I was so glad that she was able to come and see us. But other leaders like this, Ricardo Sandua is someone who I just absolutely admire, and I'm like, I need to get to know Ricardo because this man is like, just incredibly, he's just an incredible leader, and so get to know them, and then know, of course, your philanthropic give-get strategy. When you really think about this, and you think about the give-gets for a lot of these boards, you may only decide to serve on 2, maybe 3, because that may be the maximum that you can do from a give-get strategy. You may even decide to cut it from 3 down to 2 if that 2 are some really high-level boards that may require you to think about a larger give-get. And so in conclusion, by planning your nonprofit board service strategically, you can simultaneously support the nonprofit organization while strengthening your external and external credibilities. And over time, you strengthen your credibility, it can yield greater opportunities for higher profile nonprofit boards, an advisory board, or a corporate board. And I've served on all 3. Nonprofits, corporate advisory boards, and corporate boards. And then I put this little equation for all those of us that love math. Your achievement multiplied by time, multiplied by visibility, is your credibility. And if you really think about that, we know some genius 18-year-olds, but is that 18-year-old going to serve on a board because of their ingenuity? No. Part of this is your visibility, and part of this is just time. Just a few statistics about corporate board service is that the average corporate director, the average person that gets on their first corporate board, and this is not in overall, but this is just the average for your first one, is about 58, is the average age to get on your first corporate board. The average age of all directors is actually 61. So you can see that what's the common denominator? It's time. So it's achievement multiplied by time, multiplied by visibility equals that credibility. And that and remember that it's your connections and your credibility, not just your qualifications, that will get you on boards of these high-profile nonprofits. And so let me just again conclude with this, because this is a very higher level group, and some of the stuff is very routine for many of you, and for some of you, it's like, yeah, but this is a different way of thinking about it. The idea is how do you leverage your existing strengths of serving on many of the boards that you serve on that can help you to elevate your network and your connections so that more people can get to know you. And this is the other end is it time for you to reconsider, you might have been on a board for 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. Maybe it's time to think about, transitioning to a different board, and again, it has nothing to do with that you're no longer supporting them. It's just saying, I'm going to continue supporting you, but I need to think about my board service as I'm moving up, not only the upward ladder of boards, but also how can you expand your network? Because when you leave a board, it's not like you leave that network; they're your network forever. as long as you continue to stay connected with them. And every board that I've ever served on, I still keep in touch with every single one of those board directors because you just never know what happens in the future. You never know when one of them, just is the one that, that opens things up. And this is something that's also common which is why, knowing that you're sitting next to someone that might be on a board could really, on a corporate board, could be helpful to you. The average, as I mentioned, 58 is the average age to get on your first board. 61 is the average age of all directors. But usually the average time, because here's where it gets interesting, the average time to get on your second board is about 2 years. And part of this is because of this unwritten rule that if you're good enough for them, you're good enough for me. And if they already vetted you and they said you're good enough for them, why should I go through the whole vetting process? You're good enough for them, you're good enough for me. And then usually within about a year to 2 years, you get asked to serve on your third board. And then here's what usually happens. You're on 2 boards, you get asked to serve on your third or your fourth board, and I'm like, I just can't do this third or fourth board. This is just way, way too much. But I know JC. JC and I served together on this organization. I think JC would be the best person to serve on this board. And then they're like, okay. And what do? I just used my credibility. I said I vouched for them, and then whammo, they get on that board. Isn't that right, JC? Absolutely. And so, because every board that I have gotten on, somebody vouched for me because they were asked to serve on their board. In fact, this as weird as it is, this trip to Paris came because someone was asked to serve on the Expo board, but they were on their 4th or 5th, but knew me and said, Sid, I know you when you and I served on this other board 10 years ago. I think you would be good for this board. And he explains to me and says, here's the board, here are the leaders, and this is what's going to be involved. And if everything goes okay and we win this bid, we're going to bring, millions of dollars to the U.S. for this World's Fair. And all of you remember the World's Fair, like the Paris World's Fair that built the Eiffel Tower, that built the Space Needle, the New York, if anyone's been to Queens, that Queens area by Flushing Meadow, that was the 1964 World's Fair. And so they said, you could be part of this history to bring this out. And I'm like, and even if I don't get it, here's the thing, even if we don't get it, I hope, please cheer me on. I hope that we get the World's Fair here. But I share this because even if it doesn't happen, even if it does go to another country, what did I accomplish? I got to know all of the leaders that are involved on that board. You get to spend time with them, be having dinner with them, and all that kind of stuff. And you never know where that relationship may go. So my hope is that this helps you think strategically. And again, this is not about how do you pick nonprofits and which one to be passionate about. This is about how to think strategically about this. Does this make sense, everyone, I think? Excellent. Do I have time for questions? All right, any questions? Right over here.
Good morning, Sid. Annabelle Flores from Raytheon Technologies. I love the intentionality of driving your board service to serve your own career development and progressions. But one of the things I struggle with is how do you say no? What are the things that you ask yourself when presented with opportunities? People are asking you to support because you have all these great qualities. How do you say no? This is something that as you serve on a lot of boards, you're going to have to get used to saying no, because when it's I mentioned before, it's this notion that if you're good enough for that board, you're good enough for this board, and if you're good enough for this board, you're good enough for this other board, and so you're going to get asked to serve on these boards a lot. I say no a lot, and because I ask myself, because right now I'm only on one Latino nonprofit board. I'm on Latino Justice Pearl Deaf. I love the organization. That's my sole Latino board. I support a lot of Latino causes, but I'm only on one board. And I asked myself, okay, does this put me into a different circle? People that I otherwise would never have gotten to know had I not gotten into that circle. And if I feel like I can
make those connections without being on the board, then the answer is no, because there's still a fiduciary duty, as Ricardo shared, is that there's a fiduciary duty of oversight, and your name is tied to that oversight. And so it's important that you be very strategic about this. So those are the key things that we do. But when I'm presented with a nonprofit or a corporate board, the first thing I said, let me look at the board, let me look at the board of directors, let me look to see if there's a history of attracting high-level leaders onto that board. But in many cases, I'm like, you know what? I can't serve on the board, but I'll support the cause, because again, it doesn't mean that you don't support the cause, but you do have to, often say no, and it's going to go to one of the other challenges that we have, because, in our HACR research, we show that, as we know that there are very few Latinos that serve on corporate boards, and the recycle rate is very high. Most Latinos that serve, most people of color that serve on boards, serve on 2, 3, 4. I mean, every once in a while you get someone that's on 5. Which someone will tell you that's a lot, because that's just significant. And so we're always promoting, listen, if you're serving on 2, be intentional. I love what Ricardo mentioned about being intentional on sponsorship and saying, let me make sure that we're doing these things. So what I'll do is if I say no, I'll usually say no, but you know what? I know Jai Vargas. And Jai could be great for this board. I know this person, and this person can be on this board. So when I do say no, I often like to do exactly this. How can I? Because when you're asked to serve on a board and you decline, you have a significant credibility to say, you know something, if you trust me enough that I will serve on your board, I hope you trust me with my nomination of who else can serve on that board instead of me. Or if you're stepping off the board, because this often happens, you're about to be term limited because some boards have term limits. How can I make sure that as I'm thinking about my stepping off this board, that I can help sponsor someone else to get onto that board when you're doing that? Because that happens as well too. But does that help? So in other words, when you do say no, don't just say no, thank you, I'm not interested. Use it as an opportunity to say, hey, I think this person could serve on that board. Excellent. Any other questions? All right. How are we doing? All right. So in other words, hopefully this all makes sense. And again, this is a very, very senior group, but we want to just really talk about this area of strategy, because only a small few of you actually serve on a corporate board. And for those of you that especially have been in the C-suite, and there are many that are here, is how do you make sure that as you're going into these roles that your board service is rising up too? So hopefully this was very helpful. I'll end on this interesting. Oh, we do. Oh, someone from the virtual audience? You know what? Hello, virtual everybody. I forgot about that. Excuse me. I know we have lots of people watching, watching virtually.
So the question from the virtual audience says, for those not yet involved in nonprofit board membership, what are helpful ways to get introduced into these opportunities and be considered? Are there specific qualifications an individual should be working towards as a prerequisite for a nonprofit board membership?
So the qualification part is, that's a whole other session about how to really be a good board director and of Robert Rules of Order and all those things. I'm going to answer that just from the standpoint of what I shared before, that it's not about your qualifications. It's while qualifications is very good and it's going to show your talents, but someone has to vouch for that qualification, and that's that credibility portion of it. And so it's how you think about, one, if you're looking at that nonprofit, let's say you want to serve on the, the United Way of USA. Everyone knows, a great organization. One is, who's connected to it? Are you or your employer, are they connected? And by the way, almost every company here is involved with the United Way. That's why I want to put the obvious. Whether it's the United Way in your city or the United Way nationally, but every company is involved with the United Way. So it's just one of the obvious ones. But you might be saying, hey, how can I be more directly involved with this? By the way, it's also one of the great ways to really connect with your CEOs. Because I love when I hear that a company CEO is going to be at the Habitat for Humanity of Greater Milwaukee, helping to build a house, and anybody want to volunteer to be with your CEO helping to build a house. And what just happened? Not only did you help the nonprofit, you got involved with them, but what did you just do? You just connected with your CEO. And so you'll be amazed at how those relationships can go on to be very prominent in so many ways. But you need to think strategically about this, and if you do that, you'll be amazed. I look back. I mean, I've been in this professional thing for 30 years, and it's pretty. I look back at the boards that I've served on, and I sometimes pinch myself like, oh my God, I served with Eva Longoria, Emilio Stefan in the past. I've served with, I've served with a retired Fortune 100 CEO on a board. And, all of these connections, and you just never know where these connections will take you in terms of these kinds of nominations. So it's pretty incredible. But again, it's all about being strategic. But if you're serving on a lot of boards, here's the key. If you're serving on multiple boards and not a single board director serves on a corporate board or a prominent nonprofit, the odds of you getting noticed is almost zero. It's almost zero. It's just not going to happen because nobody is seeing you and nobody can nominate you, nobody can sponsor you. So look at your board, at your nonprofit boards, and you may say, listen, I've risen within the company. I think I need to revisit whether I want to be continuing on this board and let me think strategically on this other ones. That's why I say no a lot. But I said yes to two. I saw Junior Achievement USA came to me and said, so on our board, I looked at the board, I was like, and don't get me wrong, everyone's got to look, you can look at their board and like, yeah, you got some heavy hitters on this board. I'll do that one. And it's also a great cause. It's a great organization. I love Junior Achievement. It's a great youth organization. But yeah, I'm not on the local board. I said I'm going to serve on the national board. And again, this whole thing, other one with the expo, was just a completely different circle. And thinking about those. But if it's one where it has some overlap, in most cases, I think you're best off to just recommend and nominate somebody else.
We have another question from the virtual audience. Can you share your thoughts of political engagement, strategic values, and risks of volunteering with political campaigns?
So I'm going to answer that from the standpoint of if you're being politically appointed onto a board. And I was appointed by President Obama to the National Museum of the American Latino Commission. As you all know, we're getting ready to begin the process of identifying a space on the National Mall to hopefully build our first ever Smithsonian Museum that will be dedicated to Latino history and culture. And so really excited about that. In fact, tomorrow I have to race back to DC because the Molino Family Gallery at the Smithsonian opens tomorrow, and I'm the former chairman of this. So I'm like, well, as soon as I'm here, I got to hop to the plane there. Then I got to be in Paris by this weekend. So yes, it's going to be a little bit exhausting. But but the answer is this. You are your brand, and you have to ask yourself, how do you want to associate your brand? And the nonprofit that you serve on is reflective of your brand. And everyone has their choices on how they serve on their boards. It's just remembering that you are your brand, and getting onto a board is not it's not a right, it's not an automatic, it's a privilege, and you are serving in a role that is visible and public. So you may decide, is this the right kind of board that I want to serve on? If my goal, again, going to strategic, if I want to serve on these other boards, because serving on one board may actually knock you off the opportunity of serving on another. And so you need to just really think strategically about that and decide. Again, for some, they're like, this is a definite yes. And for others, you may decide that this is just not where I want to do. But I want to also make sure I'm clear from the standpoint that if that is the board that you want to serve on, by all means, definitely go for it. And just make sure, and just, be the best board member you can be. But again, thinking strategically, who else is on that board? I mean, when I got on the National Museum of the American Latino one, I looked around, I was like, you mean Eva Longoria's on my board, and Emilio Stefan's on my board, and I'm going to get to meet him and serve on the board with them, have dinner with Emilio? He's a great guy, by the way. And so's Eva, and so many other prominent leaders. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And so, and that was one where it served a major cause. But each person is different. But again, this is not about which nonprofits to serve on. This is about how to think strategically once you are considering that particular nonprofit. So I'll make sure I'm clarifying the fact that, that's what this is about.
I have another question.
Oh boy, the virtual people are on fire.
Is 2 years a good time frame to pivot to another board? Thank you, Sid.
Is 2 years, what's the question?
Is 2 years a good time frame to pivot to another board? So my understanding is you stay on a board for 2 years and then you can move on to another board.
The answer is no. It can take a few years to really build that trust and build that relationship. I love what Ricardo mentioned about the fact that this is the trust business. It may take 2, 3, 4 years for that board director to trust you enough to nominate you, because remember that it's their credibility. When you hear about we've heard a lot about mentors and sponsors, but one of the things that I think about is that, a mentor spends their time with you. A sponsor spends their credibility on you. And so, that person is using their own credibility for you and vouching for you. And, the time, and sometimes that can take time to develop. And so, and by the way, most boards, their terms are usually tend to be like at 3-year increments is very common. I mean, there may be some that are 2 years. Most of them are 3 years, and if there's term limits, it might be 3 years, and then you can get nominated for 3 more years. And in 6 years, you probably built some good credibility on there. But it does take, but 2 years is not enough time. You would need more time than that. Overall, I mean, are there some super incredible marketers? Yeah, that may happen. So good. All right. So I'm at time. So hopefully, was this helpful? I hope so. All right. This is great. Great. So again, thank you very, very much. And I know we're going to be going on, have a short break, and then come back. And I'll just say that we're really looking forward to Ana Valdez. She is the executive president of the Latino Donor Collaborative. She's going to talk about the Latino GDP. And then at lunchtime, and I'm even giving a little preview for my presentation, I'm going to do a fireside chat with Sol Trujillo. And, many of you, if you have never met Sol Trujillo, he's just an incredible leader. He was the first person, not just first Latino, first person in worldwide global history to become the CEO of a Fortune 150 company, an American leading a CAC 40 company, and an Australian company. No person has ever been the CEO of 3 major large cap companies on 3 different continents. He's the first one to do that. But we will talk a lot more about his amazing wisdom. So with that, again, thank you all very, very much. And we'll see you at break. And then we'll see us back here for Ana Valdez. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. All right.